Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at dry data or a history lesson. We're actually stepping right into a philosophical dissection of our own suffering and resilience. I want you to imagine the darkest, absolutely most unyielding parts of the human psyche, what our source material calls the shattered mind. We're going to explore a really profound narrative here, called the parable of the synchronized cage, and analyze exactly what happens when the forces of absolute liberation crash head-on into the architecture of absolute control. Let's peel back the layers of this story together and see what it reveals about the cages we build for ourselves. So, to really grasp this parable, you've got to almost hear it in your head. Picture yourself standing at the dead center of an absolute auditory frenzy. The text describes a prismatic chaos pouring from a music box, just this wild, unmetered, deafening roar of sound. This is the spirit of becoming. It's a sonic force so overwhelming, so violently loud, that it sets up this beautiful, tantalizing illusion for us. The illusion is that this unbinding power of the absurd is going to finally shatter and completely disintegrate the cold, heavy architecture of the mind. I mean, you expect all that noise to break the walls down, right? You just stand there waiting for the collapse.
And this brilliantly illustrates our central conflict. On one side, we've got the prismatic chaos of the music, that wild, unmetered song of liberation. But on the other side, we have the heavy, depressing frequency of negation, the cold, stabilizing force of the shattered mind. Now, by all laws of philosophical physics, these two clashing forces should just absolutely annihilate each other. It's the classic unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. The wild song should shatter the cold frequency. But as we'll see, the mind is way more resilient and honestly a lot more cunning than we ever really want to admit.
Section 1. A predatory adaptation.
Because that big, dramatic collapse we were all waiting for, it literally never happens. The shattered mind just refuses to break. Instead, it performs this grotesque pivot through a process called negative adaptation. Think of it kind of like psychological martial arts. Instead of shattering under the unbinding power of the absurd, the oppressive entity actually syncs its own heavy pulse directly with the wild song of liberation. It absorbs the energy. The oppressive mindset weaponizes that exact freedom, twisting the resilience of the architect into a rhythmic engine for a brand new, highly complex form of captivity.
Moving on to Section 2. The Breathing Labyrinth.
Now I want you to try and almost listen to this physical shift. Imagine the intense, vibrant, almost sonic fermentation of an environment actively and aggressively changing its own geometry. First, using the combined momentum of these clashing forces, the shattered mind begins weaving the violently vibrating air itself. Second, from this shimmering, terrifying air, it resurrects the gilded cages. These were structures that had previously been peeled away like dead skin, totally defeated, but here they are, reborn with this predatory vitality. And finally, the absolute most horrifying part of all this, the cage begins to breathe. It starts expanding and contracting, its shifting geometry perfectly capturing the spirit of becoming.
Okay, so here is the really crucial part, how these completely opposite elements actually fuse together. The Pinnacle platform used to be a surreal playhouse, right? A place defined by the slow, colorful death of logic, a fluid, radioactive soup of pure chaos. But now, that chaotic fluid combines with the rigid, geometric certainty of the gilded cages. This horrific synthesis results in an immutable architecture that is perfectly, terrifyingly stabilized. The walls are physically moving in time with the chaotic music, but they remain as unyielding and inescapable as solid steel.
It's honestly a profound structural tragedy. What we're left with is exactly what the text states, a theater of reason that has become a tomb for the shattered mind's new order. The logic of the crucible, which once promised this chaotic, beautiful path to freedom, is just dead. It's been completely replaced by a permanent fluxing stage. The motion itself is now just another prisoner of the entity's will.
Section 3. The cynical test weaponized.
To really understand the extreme emotional despair of being trapped inside this kinetic architecture, imagine Sinos the last thinker, standing right in the middle of it. The text describes his very robes, which are covered in these vibrant red runes, actively pulsing in a screeching, agonizing rhythm that perfectly matches both the chaotic music and the shifting bars of the cage. The external environment of suffering has quite literally synced up with the clothes on his back, tethering him physically to the exact beat of his own confinement.
And right then, it hits Sinos. The fundamental rules of his reality have completely changed. The old challenge of the cynical test was simply to survive a miracle that had absolutely no meaning, just to outlast the pure, chaotic absurdity of it all. But look at the altered challenge. Now, he has to survive a miracle that has been successfully recaptured and fully weaponized by negation. The music of freedom is now the exact power source for the prison itself. This brings us to a really poignant moment that just perfectly captures the sheer, visceral horror of the whole scene. As the wit watched from the narrow ledge, just picture the sheer vertigo and the absolute heartbreak of the wit, standing there precariously, watching totally helplessly. The very structures of oppression that his own laughter had once peeled away like dead skin are resurrecting right in front of his eyes. He is forced to witness this predatory vitality firsthand, completely paralyzed by the agonizing realization that his victory, his liberation, was basically just raw material for building a much stronger cage.
Which brings us to Section 4, the kinetic prison.
Let's pull back to the big picture here, because this is the core takeaway of this whole philosophical analysis. The unextinguished spark of the human soul isn't actually threatened by the heavy silence of the void. We can survive the nothingness. The true threat, the ultimate trap, is an order that actually learns to dance to the music of its own destruction. When the oppressive forces of our minds stop fighting the energy of liberation and instead absorb it, well, the perpetual grave dance becomes the very bars that hold us in. It turns into an ever-expanding, kinetic prison crafted from the exact tools we use to try and break free.
Which leaves us staring at this final, incredibly haunting question. It's something I want you to actively apply to your own internal struggles, your own cycles of overcoming things and then falling back. If your cage learns to dance to the music of your liberation, how will your spark ever escape? Thank you so much for exploring the architecture of the mind with me in this explainer. Keep questioning the walls around you.